You're scared. Scared that there's no anchors by which your readers are going to be able to hold on and stay put, grounded in the world that you're putting together. So you have an idea. A terrible idea. You write a character to represent those readers and have everything explained to them as if they themselves are visitors in this world. You do us a favor. You take that idea. You throw it in the trash. This is Attack on Table.
Attack on table!
Ryan, tell them about how today we're talking about characters who represent the readers.
Yes. Yeah. For a brief definition, a character who acts as a stand-in for the reader, reacting to events or asking questions in a way that might mirror the audience. That's basically what we're talking about. You're writing in a way that the audience will feel connected to the character because they feel like they are the character, is essentially what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think as far as attacking that notion, it's kind of more of a personal thing, and not like personal to me. I would say that I don't like it. It's that if you do something like that, you are assuming that you have a pretty good grasp of somebody else's point of view, and if you are targeting that person as your audience and you want to assume what they think, and how they experience certain things, I think that that's a dangerous thing to do. That's under the umbrella of writing a character to represent a reader. One good example is Holden Caulfield from Catcher in the Rye, and that was received pretty poorly, I believe, originally, and even worse as time went on. It was meant to represent teenage disillusionment, and really just kind of came off as, and I quote, whiny and elitist.
Yeah, I mean that's it's a great example of when you are trying to do something and then you just misread the intentions of those that you're trying to represent and therefore alienate them because now they feel like your portrayal is effectively an insult to them instead of being what it was meant to be, which was a mirror,
Yeah, yeah.
a place for them to enter. Yeah.
And I think it's one side of a spectrum that can be really, really dicey in writing. The other example that we have down here is the other end of it, which would be Bella Swan from the Twilight series, which apparently was not very well received just because she was intended to be a clean slate for the reader to insert themselves in. But readers reported finding her bland and tasteless because it was not trying to assume a whole lot about it. So you can see that it's the other tip of the wing of the bird that is reader representation. And you can try to let somebody insert themselves into a character, but you're still writing what that character does, and that would be what breaks the immersion. So, long story short, either way is kind of a nasty, or either way has kind of a nasty tendency to handcuff the reader, either by it being a self insert for them or representing their assumed point of view that they may or may not agree with.
Yeah, I think it's a bad thing to attempt because of how unless you're just like masterful at it, which is really kind of the same advice I would give for just about anything we talk about on here. Everything has the exception versus the rule. But I think the real danger you run into whenever you're trying to create a character that's meant to represent the audience is either you hold up a darkly mirror, and the people that look into it don't like what they see and then chastise you for misrepresentation, or you give them a blank page and they're like, you haven't written anything for me to find any interest in.
Right.
And they're just,
doing either is kind of dangerous. I'm with you though on the idea that there are places where it is appropriate to have a if you're writing a character to be representative of the reader just for the purposes of explanation, you could get away with doing that in like a portal fantasy where, a character from this reality goes, I'll just smack my microphone whenever I feel like it. A character
not listening,
right? A character from this reality though winds up in a totally different world. But again, be careful with how you write that, how you piece it together, how you exposit the world. Pay very close attention to the situations in which you let explanations come the reader's way.
And if I were to offer up a small bit of advice before we get into our advice, I would say if you felt like your story absolutely needed that, I would suggest doing it from like a side character or secondary, not your main character. I would have your main character maybe more defined, and then have that through the audience, out of fish kind of character that needs things explained, or will ask those questions from someone just adjacent the main character. That's how I would do it. But let's get into common advice.
Sure. Avoid self-inserts. That, I feel like, is a little bit weird advice for writing characters to represent the reader. When it's a self-insert, then that's the author's.
Yeah, I think the advice is saying to avoid it, because when you try to write for the audience, you might end up writing an insert for yourself. And I think that's why they're saying, like, try to avoid doing that. But I would just avoid all of it.
Say that, Google.
Yeah.
The elaboration is needed, and that's why we're here. Another bit of advice that we came across, avoid over-specialization. Ryan, you had some feelings about this.
Yeah, I think it's bullshit. We can bleep that out. I think saying avoid over-specialization, one, it doesn't make any sense. Two, it doesn't really clarify like what it means by that in regards to, like, is your character not meant to be competent? Are they not meant to be good at a specific thing, or like have interests or things that they are aligned to? To me, I think what they're saying is, like, don't try to make your character more vague so that they can feel like be more accepting to people outside of it. But it's like, just because someone is good at a thing, just because your character is good at a thing, doesn't mean other people that aren't also into that thing or good at that thing can't connect with your character. Because ultimately, what we're talking about connecting wise is an emotional thing or a situational thing, not like their occupation or their specific interests. So I think that's,
and things like
I think that's absolute garbage advice from my perspective.
Well, how would you define the over specialization that it's recommending that you stay away from? Like, what, get into that for anybody who would just hear that and go, I don't know what that means.
I mean, like, so from the little that I understood based on what it was providing with the advice is it's don't put your character in a bubble. Don't try to classify them too much, because they won't connect with people that aren't that thing. Either it's and it can get very specific, i.e. Culture, i.e. interests, job, like whatever. So like, to me, when you're saying like don't over specialize, you're like, write a character that may or may not have a job. They don't really care about it, or maybe they do. They fall, like, you're talking about writing lukewarm characters across the board so that they're not too offensive to anyone outside of that, and are still like welcoming and open to those people. And I'm just like, there's no reason why I, as a writer, can't be interested in a basketball player and the struggle that they're dealing with in life, because I can connect with the struggle or something else in their personality or something. I don't have to align with them on everything.
Give them human flaws. Duh. That's all I have to say
Versus
about that.
inhuman
Right.
versus inhuman flaws.
Yep. Those are the ones. If you find yourself giving your character inhuman flaws, we'll do our best to make an AOT for that one sometime.
Yeah, hopefully the character is inhuman. That might might help.
Yep. But you're gonna have trouble finding an audience.
Yeah, so you come here for the strong, common advice that's out there on the internet, and you've heard it. You've heard it here. Give your characters human flaws.
I think it's probably just another oversimplification, but it's a carbon copy of avoid self-inserts in Mary Sue's. Don't write somebody into the story who's not going to have any problems, who's not going... Because how can a character grow if they don't have something, a flaw to overcome? Where's the arc there? Where's something for anybody to relate to? And I think that that's the big issue against writing characters that represent readers in any scope. When it's done incorrectly and not carefully, you're going to be finding yourself with a bunch of readers who can't find themselves in whatever, even though you've tried to put the character with just the glass slippers. Their feet aren't going to work. They're not getting in the slippers. Not every foot will go in the slipper. Enough about that.
We should just leave that without context. We should just leave that without context. Feet, slippers don't fit. Move on.
Yep. Moving on.
Yeah. And I think this next piece of advice is key to essentially what you and I are saying. And basically the reason why the over specialization thing is stupid. And that is use familiar settings over character traits. You can connect a character to an audience member simply by putting them in scenarios or surroundings that feel familiar to other people.
Yeah, I did not hate that advice.
You know, yeah, you don't have to like hinge on to these things that are very particular. You just put them in a vague area that a lot of people can connect with. Be true to the source of that, and I think you won't have a problem getting any kind of connection between the character and the audience.
Yeah. And the last one that we saw, we're kind of guessing at what the advice is trying to tell you, is to, rather than you have your character represent the audience, just have the character act as the eyes for the audience. So it limits the scope of what the reader perceives to just through that character. Give that character something or a few traits that the audience can pick and choose to relate to. But it's almost, to me, like, if you are trying to pull back, if you're just doing that to be diet representing the reader, perhaps great value representing the reader, it's not the best. You're playing a dangerous game. But if it's
dollar store representation,
yeah, we're watching you, Dollar General. Why do you have locations in Antarctica?
Not a sponsor. We got to get that Dollar General sponsorship, dude. It is a little confusing advice to say, like, use them as the eyes of the audience. I think you were trying to explain it to me earlier. I kind of agree with it. It's just like use them as your eyes instead of putting them in your character's shoes, or the shoes of the audience rather.
Yeah.
I can kind of get behind that a little
It's
bit better.
the only way that advice makes any sense to me.
Yeah.
But as far as like trying to assume the point of view of characters, or just trying to make that connection with your readers, you made a really good point when we were discussing this about the X-Men and how they handled a connection with the readers, and I think you should share that with everybody.
Yeah, so I think ultimately what this this idea of creating characters as representation of audience or readers, I think what the goal is to bring in an aspect of real life that readership can connect to and maybe start a conversation. I think X-Men is a great example of how you should go about doing those. I think straight up having the conversation is a bad angle of attack. I think using proxies to have similar conversations that lead us to the same conclusion is a great way to do that. X-Men essentially introduced a race conversation to a whole generation without talking about race. I think it altered a lot of the ways that kids from my generation like saw race problems, and I never saw it as a race thing. I just understood like the persecution of someone else for something that they can't control as an evil thing. But what the X-Men did was they didn't just hinge on creating one character for the audience to then step into the shoes of, because that's really hard to do. They had a plethora of characters that were, in depth on their own right, that you could just latch onto the one that you felt connected to the most. And so you could put yourself in there. You might have felt represented, or maybe you agreed with their struggle or their emotions or their thoughts on how a thing should be handled. And then you put yourself there. The reader or the writers didn't have to like drag you into it. You opted to be a part of that. And the X-Men franchise is a great example of like how you as a writer can do that. If you're wanting to have a conversation, if you're wanting to pull the audience in, give them plenty of options. Don't just rely on one character to do that.
Yeah. I mean, long story short, your job as an author is to offer the reader the opportunity to relate. Uh, give your characters a few relatable traits, sure, but also relatable goals and emotions and scenarios that they have to get by, struggles that they have to overcome, and then that way the reader can pick what it is and how they see themselves in that character, rather than being told, this one's you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, honestly, if we're being super honest, you should probably be doing that regardless of what story you're trying to tell, because you don't want to have like 4 main characters and they all feel and act and react the same.
Sure.
So you should be creating diversity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why, just to go into an anime direction and everything, because there's so much struggle in his own personal story that never really seems to get resolved. I think that's why a lot of people relate more to Vegeta than Goku.
Well, I think we could all get behind Vegeta's frustration. Where it's like, man, I put in so much effort and this guy just he's always better. And I can't explain it. Yeah.
Going back to the old spectrum, though, don't Bella Swan either. Don't just make an empty hole that your reader is supposed to just slip inside.
Yeah, you can't expect a reader to be comfortable just sitting in like a hollow husk and be like, yeah, I made this husk for you. It's specific for you. Get in it, feel comfortable, walk around in it. They're just be like, I don't feel like a different person. I just feel like I'm wearing a skin suit, and it's kind of gross.
I don't like the
Yeah.
pokey parts. I'm like, oh, those are your pokey parts.
Yeah, stop complaining.
Right, you love them. I know you do. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, long story short, you're right with what we're discussing here. And again, this is a sidestep away from those allowable circumstances like portal fantasies and other mediums of storytelling that sort of require an audience aid. The thing that we want you to avoid is to expect either too much or too little from your readers. Like, you finish a book and feel good about it afterwards because it made you work a little, but not too much. So, if you don't have that balance, you're kind of gambling. Unless maybe you want the readers to hate that person. That's another exception, not the rule.
But we do have a Dear Duncan, so if you want to swap over to the studio real quick. And through the power of the internet.
No.
By the power vested in me.
No. You did
By
nothing.
the power of Grayskull and our friends at NJC Printing, we have this nice, wonderful overlay. And we've got a Dear Duncan. They actually submitted a name this time, so that's nice. People are getting a little bit less fearful of putting some information out there. Dear Duncan, I enjoy writing humor and romance, but I worry these genres make it harder to be taken seriously. Advice I read often frames them as lighter, easier, or less important, even though they are difficult to do as well, or to do well. I feel pressure to avoid. Oh, sorry. Wow. I think my glasses are smudged. I feel pressure to pivot towards something more respectable. Is this concern realistic, or am I undervaluing the kind of work I actually want to do? And this was submitted by Caitlin.
Caitlin, I hope you're having a lovely evening. Don't do that. Don't change what you're writing just to try to fit the market. That is advice I think you would get anywhere.
Well, I have heard advice where they say write to the market, but that's for people that can write extremely fast and can be kept up with what market trends are going. I disagree with that stuff.
Yeah, I think just from the conversations we've had with a lot of authors throughout the first season, that depending on whether or not you're working with any kind of a publisher or anything like that, getting a book gone from manuscript to market is easily 8 months to a year long process. And if you start at the back end of a market trend that's getting ready to shift, then all of a sudden you're putting out something that's tailored to the market a year ago, or maybe 2 if it takes you a while to write it. Like, you're much better served writing something that you feel passionate about, because the markets change, the trends change, things go up and down in popularity. But for the next time that what did she say she likes to write? Humor and
romance.
I mean, romance I think right now is relatively popular, so I wouldn't imagine that you would have much trouble getting that notice. But if if humor becomes much more popular, if you have a comedy book, get it out there. It'll be there waiting for people whenever the market kind of shifts that way. Then you're there.
Yeah, and I think, and this is Sean has brought this point up multiple times. This would be a great time to actually have the person that submitted this on the show so we can ask follow-ups. Because right now we're just kind of deciphering the message as best as we can. I think what they're really concerned about is that the advice they're getting is that humor and romance writing is not taken seriously, so they should focus their efforts on something not necessarily marketable, but like that's considered more serious as far as being a writer. I disagree with that. I think if you feel like you're really good at one or the other, develop that skill set. You can write anything because humor is necessary in all types, all genres. Romance is necessary in all genres. And if you can understand how to make those two really good and solid, you can write anything you want. If you're trying to put it specifically in that, I don't see any reason why you would have to stop doing that.
Yeah, and I think the last thing that I would have to say on that topic would be, if you're wanting to figure out how you can change tactics to find more success, I would keep the passion in lieu of switching up how you're looking for an audience. Because there's people out there who exclusively read comedy or exclusively read romance. Go find them instead of expecting to change the entire way that you might write for the goal of being marketable or being taken more seriously. Go and find your audience, and a lot of what that is what we're finding out with this whole endeavor is just be as consistent as you can, get in front of as many people as you can. You'll put it together in time.
Yeah. And when you do, come onto our show. We'd love to talk to you.
So, if you have anything that you want to say any more about our attack or our table, or if you have any advice for Caitlin that we didn't address, if you disagree with us on any of the stances we took, fire it down in the comments, strike the like and subscribe.
Or semperscribe.
Or semperscribe.
He said it.
It's Ryan. How do we end these?
Post haste.